United with Christ. Meet local churches with open doors, serving throughout the Border Valley community, and sharing the truth and hope of God's love and salvation. A presentation by KSE Channel 38 Christian Television. And now, United with Christ.
Hello, my name is Jeff Ryder. I'm the pastor of El Paso Bible Church, right here in El Paso on the west side of town. It's my privilege to be with you here at this time and talking about a very special subject that is of great relevance to all of us and the society in which we live in and the churches that make up that society. I'd like to share with you a passage of Scripture just to get us started here at this time. And this passage is found in Matthew chapter 9, starting at verse 35. It says this, "Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, 'The harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest.'" A few months back, I was on the program talking about my career as a missionary and echoed some of those very verses at that particular time. At this time, though, we would like to talk about a different sort of circumstance. In this passage, we notice that Jesus was in the purpose of healing, but yet also displaying great compassion on those who were weary and scattered, acknowledging that they had no shepherd and were sheep wandering about in that way. We are not immune to the fact that there are issues in our society of a sexual nature. We understand that the sexual aspect of our society is thrown at us on all levels, everything from the billboards as we drive on the highway to commercials on TV to graphic media, to those type things that are causing us to be sensitive to this issue. But there's a particular issue that is plaguing us in the church at this particular time and in society, and that is the subject we'd like to talk about here today and over the next 3 episodes. And this area is a difficult one to talk about and an uncomfortable one even. But this morning we'd like to talk about this area called sexual abuse. And I have my lovely wife here who is with me this morning because this is an area of particular interest to her, and we would like to talk about this because it is an issue that we all need to be aware of. My wife, Joy, can you tell us why that this area in particular is an area that you are passionate about?
Well, first of all, when you meet someone who's passionate about something, it's usually because they have had this in their background or it's been a personal thing for them. And that is for me. I've had sexual abuse in my background. I'm passionate about it because I know after dealing with my own sexual abuse, the different repercussions that come from that. I've met many women, and now it's men. It's not just girls and women, it's men and it's boys. The different individual repercussions from this in their life and how it's holding them back from enjoying a full life. Just how it's been very painful for them, and I just have a passion to help them to realize their full potential in life and to be able to live life beyond what this has done to them.
Do you have some statistics that you can share relating to this particular area?
Well, now statistics are telling us that it's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys. That's just astounding. And sexual abuse now is at epidemic levels.
So this is 1 in 4 girls before the age of 18 will experience some form of sexual abuse in our society. And that number among boys as well, 1 in 6 before the age of 18. This is astounding to us when we think about this because of the fact that it is all around us. Now let's think about this a moment. Where were you last night or yesterday? And where will we be a few days from now when we gather in our churches and we think about the women alone? 1 in 4 have experienced some form of sexual abuse in their past. This is an astounding figure, and these are the current figures that we can share with you here today. Now, Joy, you mentioned that every 2 minutes there is a sexual abuse incident that is occurring in our country, and that too is an astounding figure when you think about that. We were talking today just on the fact of if we would put that in a different arena of how that would impact us. So the analogy here, let's talk about that analogy that we had. If we'd put this sexual abuse, but describing it in different terms regarding that analogy we talked about earlier today.
If you were to take 4 girls, and we were looking at 4 girls, and we would say in the next 2 minutes one of these young girls is going to have one of their limbs chopped off. What would we do about that? Would that not horrify us enough to step in and try to stop that? What can we do for that little girl? Or say we line up 6 boys and say in the next 2 minutes we're going to take one of them and chop off one of their limbs. I would hope that would horrify us enough to step in and do something about it.
Well, that's a very graphic and a rough type of an analogy that we see in this. But let's think about that for a moment, because if that was the case, I have no doubt that there would be an outcry that would say we must stop the perpetrator of this, and let's find these people and take care of them so that this type of thing does not happen. That would be part of the outcry, but then there would also be an outcry, okay, we must help these victims. If this is happening to them, then we must find a way to help rehabilitate them and help them to adjust in life. Well, clearly we can see the analogy here that though we are not talking about a physical impairment, but we are talking about a significant emotional and spiritual one. And we can see the needs for dealing with those who are the perpetrators of this type of a thing, but also helping the victims. And that's where our hearts are in this type thing, because we understand that there are many people out there that are having difficulty. Now, if we take that analogy and we consider it in the way of describing it like we have, and someone would say, well, you know, this type thing is a shame, it is happening, but it's best not to talk about difficult things like this. And we just need to pick up the pieces and try to move on. There would probably be an outcry that says, no, we cannot do this. But sadly, that is what the response is regarding this issue of sexual abuse. It is kind of hushed up a bit. It is something that is uncomfortable to talk about. The problem with that is, and Joy, if you could address this, most victims of sexual abuse, they don't come out and talk about it right away.
No, they don't. And especially now, I think we've become immune to just the whole term of sexual abuse in our society, and we think it always happens to someone else. And so just the hush factor in that you say the word sex or sexual abuse, it's very uncomfortable for people. So yes, there's a hush factor to that, and people just would rather not talk about it. But for the victim is facing things such as fear and shame, humiliation. So fear in, I'm scared of what this person could still do to me if I say something, or fear in what will people think of me if they find out that something's happened to me, fear of just the future, how can I get along with life? There's shame. There's shame in that, did I do something to make this happen? Did I smile at the wrong person? Should I have gotten out of a certain particular place before? Should I have left earlier? it's always on what did I do. The victim puts this onto themselves, and there's humiliation in that I've been violated, I'll never get past this, people will look at me as I'm dirty. A girl might say to herself, no one will want to marry me now or date me because I have sexual abuse in my past. They blame themselves. There's all of that's involved. And so that goes along with just the hush factor from other people, but then a victim faces their own, if you want to call it a hush factor for themselves on why they aren't coming out or saying something or bringing attention to who their abuser is so they can bring charges.
And there's a time factor in this as well, because it's often years before they actually come out with this that's happened, sometimes even with close family and relatives and things of that nature, correct?
Well, if there's sexual abuse in a family, say there's just even, I mean, we can't look at sexual abuse just as rape. There's molesting, there's incest, all of that comes under sexual abuse. So if there is incest, a child is taken care of by a parent, but is also being abused by a parent. So how do they seek help? You know, how do you help someone like that? Then just with girls, you know, facing that all the time, you know, what are they putting onto themselves? Can I really talk about it? Because they're afraid. It's those same factors, fear, shame, all of that keep you from saying something. And before a long time has gone by, girls who are abused when they're young, not just girls, but most of us, we don't know our criminal rights or our civil rights. We don't know how long we have before we can report an abuse. We think that as time goes on, well, I'll still be able to take care of that later, and then before you know it, your statute of limitations has run out.
Right. So two of the problems that we see in this now is that there are issues regarding the hush factor, where this is something that we don't talk about, and it's uncomfortable to talk about, and a victim is certainly feels that way. So and we can think about that because as we're talking about it now, it's an uncomfortable subject, but if you have been victimized in this, it is especially an uncomfortable subject. It tends to be squelched, and the baggage that carries on with that can happen for years before it is actually brought up and dealt with. And that's the delayed action factor in this whole problem, because oftentimes those who are victims do not talk to anybody about it.
No, and they're also finding that now it's taking maybe 1 to 2 decades before someone will come forward with their story.
Right, so that emphasizes the difficulty here in dealing with this in a societal context, but when we consider it in the church factor, it is even more difficult to deal with it because the perpetrators, the ones who are doing the sexual abuse, are oftentimes people that are known, not unknown. They're authority figures. There's some sort of control that they have, and that is the combination of those things are what they use to begin that process. Now, Joy, you're passionate about this subject, and you're passionate about it because you made reference to the fact of having a personal connection to that. For the sake of those who are viewing here, can you go into a little detail about that issue that occurred in your life?
Yes, as you mentioned, it's abuse happens in the church and outside of the church. For myself, my abuse was in the church. I grew up in a home where we went to church several times a week. We were considered a good family, you know, good reputation. So being young, I had a lot of friends, and it was a big deal when we would be able to get into the high school youth group. And, you know, as you were out of junior high and once you were in high school, as you kind of, you know, that feeling you've arrived, you're in high school, and youth group was a really big deal, and we had a lot of activities. We saw as junior hires that the high schoolers had more fun, so couldn't wait to get into the high school youth group. Once there, my youth director was a very big type personality person, and probably within 6 months of joining the high school youth group, being in high school, my youth director started the grooming process on me. I will say that we'll talk about this later, about the grooming process. But the grooming process is an insidious thing. It is very individual. And yeah, like we said, we'll talk about that more. But that grooming process was begun and went on for about 6 months. And then it progressed into a physical touch. An innocent physical touch, maybe a touch on the hand or a kiss on the cheek. And it would progress and progress along with a threat to don't say anything, because if someone finds out, you'll look really bad. And you don't want that. And you don't want your friends to find out because, well, we have a special relationship. And so it progressed and progressed. And as the physical progressed, then the threats progressed as well. When I turned 15, I was a sophomore in high school, and like I said, it was just progressing. So one day I was called into his office for an appointment, which that's what it was called. And going in, I could tell something was just different and off. He was acting different, and he was just a different personality anyway, and so you never knew what to expect. So he, on that day, was, like I said, different, but he, in his office that day, did force himself on me, which resulted in a sexual assault, which is what we would say we call rape, and that was when I was 15. Well, not knowing then what my civil rights or criminal rights were, and not really understanding that a criminal act had just been committed on me, and the threats from him to don't say a word because then you'll ruin me and it'll ruin you and ruin your reputation, and what about your parents and your friends and your family, what will they think of you? And then after the actual rape, then the manipulation kicked in, and we had talked about that earlier today. His manipulation of me and using the threats and using outside factors to manipulate what I would say, what I wouldn't, how I would act, and how I wouldn't, and so he could continue to get what he wanted. So at 15, you're just dealing with life and being a teenager, and then when something like that happens, just piggyback that onto everything that just a teenager's going through and trying to find their way. What are they going to do with the rest of their life, and all of that. So trying to get into adulthood from there. So it's very, very difficult with that.
Yeah, and we can see, to emphasize again, that this whole process begins by a coercion that occurs, and then a coercion and a grooming process that occurs. And then once the relationship turns to a physical nature, then it becomes a manipulatory aspect to it as well. And this was Joy's experience, but in researching this and by experience in contact with other folks, we know that this is a process that has repeated itself over and over and over again, and not isolated to one particular kind of church or organization. I mean, we know that the headlines have been full of this in recent years in the Catholic Church, and we would be naive to think that it was isolated to that denomination, if you will. For that's not the case, for we are aware of all kinds of situations, all kinds of backgrounds, ways of life, and in different churches where this type thing is occurring. And the sad thing is that the pattern of the hush factor and the pattern of the delayed action factor are just as significant in the Christian realm as they are in the non-Christian realm. So this is part of the problem that we are facing. Now, what we would like to do is to talk about this a bit more over the next few weeks. How do we identify some of these things? How do we provide support for those who are victims? What can be done for those who are the perpetrators? What actions can be done regarding this? What are some signs of these things occurring? How does it get passed on from church to church? For that happens as well, and we want to talk about some of those things. So these are important topics that we need to be aware of. And we are becoming more and more involved in the fact of trying to help people. Identify a little bit here. We're wrapping up this thing here quickly, Joy, but the healing that has occurred, because you have been a victim, and in the terms of the child abuse area, there is victim, and then there is survivor, and then there is thriver, those who actually not only survive this, but actually live a fruitful and a productive life after something like this happens. But what would you say was the primary ingredient that has made you become a survivor and a thriver?
Well, as we talked about, sexual abuse is very individual. Each person will go through a process and how they process what happened to them, and hopefully each person will come to healing and then become that thriver. For myself, I know it was the Lord, and if I didn't have the Lord, I don't know where I would be. The hope in Him, knowing that it's because of Him that we can keep living even through hard circumstances and whatever happens to us. So I would say that's where I would squarely place my being able to have healing and then not only survive but to thrive.
Yes. And as two people who are involved in ministry, and we've been involved in a ministry context for 30 years of our entire marriage, we would absolutely say that that is the case. From the spouse of a sexual abuse victim and from the sexual abuse victim side of things, we can say without question, full healing we truly believe comes in a relationship with Christ. And without that component, healing will come at a partial level. And we would like to propagate this concept and use it to get the word out, to begin communicating that there are victims all around us. Keep in mind of those statistics, that 1 in 4 females that you may come in contact with may have had some form of sexual abuse. And chances are they haven't talked with anyone about that. What we would like to do and talk about over the next few weeks is what we can do about it. Joy has been working hard over the past couple of months to put a nonprofit organization together. We will pass on some of the information about that, but also involved in something else that's happening right now regarding the statutes of limitations in the state where her abuse occurred, and Joy has been instrumental in helping to get some legislation established to where the statute of limitations can be removed. Could you talk a moment about that in the state of Indiana?
Yes, back in March, we decided to start a petition to ask the governor of Indiana to eliminate the statute of limitations. In 2 months, we had over 3,000 petition signers, so we're going for 5,000, and then if we can keep going past 5,000, that would be terrific. But it's definitely a start. And a petition will gain attention. We were able to, I think it was within the first month, deliver 1,000 signatures when we met with the governor's office in Indiana. So because that's where my abuse occurred, that's why I'm working for eliminating the statute of limitations in Indiana.
And in the state of Indiana, the way it is right now, that when a sexual abuse situation happens, there's a very small window of time where things could be dealt with and where things can be reported, and then a criminal process could begin. And so we're seeking to be involved in this to where that statute of limitation could be removed, because as we said, that delayed factor. Oftentimes victims are not even talking about this until 10, 15 years afterwards. By that time, in the state of Indiana and in other states, the statute of limitations is actually run out. And a person could walk into a police station, confess to a crime, and walk right back out because of the statute of limitations. Now, one of the things we'd like to ask you to consider is that signing this petition, which is going to speak in big ways regarding the state of Indiana and their legal system, you don't have to be from the state of Indiana to sign this petition. If you are someone who is sensitive to the fact that this is a problem in society that needs to be corrected, then we encourage you to go to a website that we have established and sign that petition and let them know that you support the changing of that legislation. Things are underway within the government, the state government of Indiana, for that to occur. And we will talk much more about this in the weeks to come, so please contact those you may be aware of that have this in their background. Have them tune in or record this program, because we're going to provide some resources and some help, we hope, and even some things locally that we hope will be of value to you regarding this. Our pleasure to be with you here. Again, my name is Jeff Ryder, pastor of El Paso Bible Church. We have contact information that you can contact us should you have any further questions. Until that next time, we ask that you will consider these things and tune in. Next week at this same time, we'll be talking about this more, and grateful for this opportunity, and we are prayerful that when we are aware and making effort in these directions, the Lord will use those to bring about healing in many people's lives. So we hope to see you again next week.
Thank you for watching United with Christ. We pray this has been a blessing to you, and we invite you to tune in again tomorrow. We invite your comments, questions, or prayer requests. You may contact us at KSE Christian Television, 2201 East Wyoming Avenue, El Paso, Texas 79903, or call us at 915-532-8588 during regular business hours. Or you can visit our website at www.ksctv.com. God bless you.